efficiencies that we're seeing in this area are not dissimilar in some ways to auditors and credit rating agencies who in fact, in some ways have not wanted to bite the hand that feeds them in some instances. And I'm not saying that that's been broadly observable, but there are instances where I believe that that auditors and credit rating agencies and independent experts could probably have done a better job and could have pushed back a little bit harder if they if they had a different duty, if you like.
Now, look, you've obviously looked at what other regulators are doing overseas. Obviously, this, as you're saying, there are reviews going on all around the world in the wake of the global financial crisis. Now, I think you've mentioned to me previously that you talked with regulators in Hong Kong, Australia and Canada as well.
That's right.
And did you take bits from what they were doing and put them into a New Zealand context, or
how
did that?
Yeah, we did. And in fact, Canada's interesting because Canada's going through a not dissimilar process, actually. They are amalgamating, I think it's 13 different state-based regulators. And they have actually, the FMA Establishment Board, we'd settled on a recommendation for a board of non-executive independent directors. And interestingly, a couple of weeks later, the Canadians announced that they had come up with a very similar model. So we looked at what they were trying to achieve there. We looked at what the Dutch had done when they had created their integrated regulator 5 or 6 years ago. And we looked at what Hong Kong had done, in particular in relation to the roles of the chair and the role of the CEO. They have got some very detailed. They've done a lot of detailed work on the authority delegation. So that was very useful to us to look at that and look at how that had worked for them in areas where it hadn't worked so well. So that really fed into our process and has helped us a lot with that governance, CEO, delegated authority, and how the reporting line is going to work throughout the organisation, and who's going to be who's the decision-making body for each of the relevant decisions.
Now, I guess obviously the whole reason behind the FMA is that the government and plenty of other people concluded that investors had lost confidence in the New Zealand regulatory system. Do you think that this new board will bring back some confidence? And not the board, the FMA. And separately, if we'd had this type of system in place 5 years ago, do you think it could have prevented the likes of the wholesale collapse of the finance company sector that we've seen?
Look, it's a good question. I think that it has a very good chance of improving the regulatory outcomes. I think much of that will depend on funding. Certainly the establishment board has come up with a range of scenarios, as I mentioned before, on budget, and it would be fair to say that at the higher end of those budget estimates, I think that you're probably going to get a better regulatory outcome than you would at the lower end. Although,
what are those figures?
Well, I don't really want to. I mean, what I can say is that in what you're looking at now on a run rate basis, the Securities Commission's annual operating budget is around $15 million. When you look at the Commerce Commission and the Reserve Bank, they're sort of around the $45 to $50 million. So we're looking at a number in between those two, but certainly we'd be looking for a decent sized kick up on that $15 million.
So possibly sort of doubling even of that budget.
Oh look, I think for double that you'd have a very good regulatory apparatus and you could expect very good regulatory outcomes. But just to come back to the question before, I think that some of that that late cycle credit expansion that we saw globally would be very hard for one regulator alone to really put a foot on. But what you're seeing is a very broad sort of regulatory response globally, and you're also seeing it locally. So you've got the Reserve Bank now having the prudential oversight of the non-bank deposit takers, and and insurers, and I think that will make quite a difference to in the future in that sector. You've also got the licensing regimes across the board, and then you've got the establishment of the FMA. I think that it will be reasonable to expect better regulatory outcomes in the future.
Okay. And how do you think we should judge the FMA's success, say, 5 years from now? I mean, will it be the number of convictions, or will it be something else? Yeah,
no, that's a very good question. Look, I think there will be. There will be convictions along the way, and there will be directors banned. There will be enforceable undertakings. I think, I think the real measure of success is the degree to which there is increased participation in financial markets. That will be a reflection of an increasing level of confidence in markets, and to the extent to which household balance sheets change and move away from this very high dependency on property and on debt associated with that property, and a high proportion of financial assets on household balance sheets. So I think the measures will be more like a decade away. And it will take some time. But if the regulator can get some runs on the board early, demonstrate that it's that is a credible force, and that investors can be more confident in terms of their participation in financial markets, then and that those markets deliver on their reasonable expectations, then I think you could look back in a decade's time and say, well, that there is a measure of success there.
Now, the role of chairman, the applications for chairman of the actual FMA itself have closed about now. You've obviously chaired the establishment board. Is your name in the hat to chair the actual FMA itself?
No, I advised the minister a couple of months ago that I wouldn't be seeking the chair of the FMA. I've got other commercial interests that I want to follow, but I'm clearly interested in the long-term success of the FMA, so I'll be watching it with close interest.
Okay, well, it's Simon Botherway, the chairman of the government's Financial Markets Authority Establishment Board. Thanks for coming in, Simon, and I'm Gareth Vaughan from interest.co.nz with another Double Shot interview.